The sleek black helicopter descended toward Central Park like a metallic pterodactyl, its rotors whipping up a tornado of autumn leaves, hot dog wrappers, and what appeared to be someone's toupee. Felix Blackwood, 32, stepped out wearing a $8,000 Tom Ford suit and the kind of smug expression that screamed, "I own your mortgage." "Sir, the Japanese investors are expecting you in 20 minutes, his assistant Jeremy yelled over the rotor noise, clipboard fluttering like a demented bird. "Relax, Jeremy. I've got this handled," Felix shouted back, adjusting his diamond cufflinks. "What could possibly go wrong?" The universe, apparently, had been waiting for exactly that question. As Felix strutted away from the helicopter with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no in his life, he failed to notice the massive tree branch directly above him, a branch that had been weakened by the helicopter's downdraft and was now plummeting toward his perfectly styled head. Crash! The branch hit Felix square in the forehead, sending him tumbling backward into a nearby hot dog cart. Mustard exploded everywhere. Sauerkraut rained down like confetti. And Felix Blackwood, Manhattan's most eligible bachelor, found himself buried under a mountain of frankfurters and his own shattered dignity. "My cart!" screamed Giuseppe, the hot dog vendor. 40 years I build this business." "My suit!" Felix wailed, emerging from the wreckage covered in relish and regret. "This cost more than your cart." "Your face costs more than my cart too, but I don't see you complaining," Giuseppe shot back, waving a mustard-covered spatula. 3 blocks away, Nerissa Hope was having her own battle with gravity. The 27-year-old was balanced precariously on a ladder outside Sunrise Diner, trying to fix the flickering neon sign with a screwdriver and a lot of hope. Her grandmother Rose sat in a wheelchair below, wrapped in a faded pink blanket, watching with worried eyes. "Nessa, honey, maybe we should call a professional," Rose wheezed, her voice weak from the chemo treatments. "With what money, Grandma?" Nerissa called down, her curly red hair escaping from under a backwards baseball cap. "Besides, I've got this. I'm basically a professional now. I've watched 3 YouTube videos." "That's what worries me," Rose muttered, then started coughing, the deep, rattling cough that had been getting worse each week. Nerissa's heart clenched. She looked down at her grandmother, the woman who'd raised her after her parents died, who'd worked double shifts at the textile factory to put her through community college, who was now fighting cancer with the same stubborn determination she'd brought to everything else in life. "I'm going to fix this, Grandma," Nerissa said, her voice thick with emotion. "The sign, the money problems, everything. I promise." Just then, the screwdriver slipped from her grip, and Nerissa lunged forward to catch it. The ladder wobbled dangerously. "Nessa!" Rose screamed. But instead of falling backward, Nerissa somehow managed to grab the sign itself, which immediately broke free from its mounting. She swung across the street like a red-haired Tarzan, the entire neon sign crackling with electricity as she sailed through the air. Felix, who had just finished arguing with Giuseppe about Frankfurter-related dry cleaning costs, looked up just in time to see a wild-haired woman swinging toward him on a sparking neon sign that read, "Sunrise, Din, Zzz." "Incoming!" Nerissa yelled. Wham! They collided in a spectacular explosion of neon sparks, hot dog condiments, and what could only be described as cosmic irony. Felix went flying backward into a nearby fountain, while Nerissa landed face first in the remains of Giuseppe's cart. For a moment, the street was silent except for the sound of sparking electricity and Giuseppe's creative Italian cursing. Felix emerged from the fountain looking like a drowned billionaire, his hair plastered to his head and his suit now decorated with pond scum and someone's discarded sandwich wrapper. Nerissa slowly lifted her head from the hot dog cart, a pickle slice stuck to her forehead and mustard dripping from her nose. They stared at each other across the disaster zone. "Are you kidding me right now?" Felix sputtered, wringing fountain water from his sleeves. "Are you kidding me?" Nerissa shot back, pulling the pickle off her forehead with a wet plop. "I was having a perfectly horrible day until you decided to stand under my crash landing." "Your crash landing?" "Lady, I was minding my own business when you decided to go all Spider-Man on a broken sign." "Spider-Man?" Spider-Man? Nerissa stood up, covered in condiments and righteous fury. I was trying to fix my grandmother's diner sign so we don't lose the business that's paying for her cancer treatment. You walking trust fund. Felix opened his mouth to fire back, then stopped. Cancer treatment. The words hit him like a cold slap. He looked across the street and saw Rose in her wheelchair, trying to stand up despite her obvious weakness, calling out, "Nessa! Nessa! Are you hurt?" Something twisted in Felix's chest. When was the last time anyone had worried about him like that? "Is she okay?" he asked quietly. "She's dying," Nerissa said bluntly, tears mixing with the mustard on her face. "Stage 3 lung cancer. The treatments are working, but they cost more than I make in 6 months, and our insurance is garbage, and now I just destroyed the sign that brings in customers and—" She stopped, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Why am I telling you this?" Felix stared at her. This woman, this beautiful, fierce, condiment-covered woman, was fighting for her grandmother's life, while he worried about his suit. When was the last time he'd cared about anyone more than himself? "What's your name?" he asked. "Nerissa Hope. And you're probably some Wall Street jerk who's going to sue me for property damage." "Felix Blackwood. And I'm not going to sue you." He paused. "I'm going to hire you." "Hire me? To do what? Destroy more signs?" "Because I think I've reached my quota for today." Felix couldn't help it. He laughed. Actually laughed for the first time in months. "No, not to destroy signs. To marry me." Nerissa blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Fake marry me. For 1 month. $50,000. "Okay, you definitely have a concussion," Nerissa said, looking around for help. "Someone call 911. Rich guy's brain is broken." "I'm serious." Felix stepped closer, his eyes intense. "I have the most important business meeting of my life in 15 minutes. The Japanese investors won't work with unmarried men. They think we're unstable. I need a wife, and you need money for your grandmother's treatment." "This is insane!" Nerissa shook her head. "You're insane!" "Insane enough to transfer $50,000 to your account right now." Felix pulled out his phone. "What's your bank information? I don't even know you." "You know I'm rich, I'm desperate, and apparently I have terrible luck with gravity," Felix said. "That's more than most people know about their spouses." Nerissa looked at him, really looked at him. Beneath the arrogance and the expensive clothes, she saw something else. Fear, desperation, and weirdly, kindness. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you're real," Felix said simply. "You care more about your grandmother than yourself. You swing on broken signs to try to save a business. You're brave and crazy and completely honest, and I haven't met anyone like that in... ever." "Flattery will get you nowhere," Nerissa said, but her voice was softer. "How about honesty then?" Felix took a deep breath. "I'm terrified of losing everything I've built. My father thinks I'm a failure. My board thinks I'm too young. And these investors are my last chance to prove I'm not just some spoiled rich kid. I need someone who can show them I'm capable of commitment, of caring about something more than money." "And you think I can do that?" "I think you already do that every day." Nerissa felt her heart do something weird and fluttery. Damn it. She was not going to fall for this ridiculous, arrogant, fountain-soaked man. 1 month, she said finally. 1 month, Felix agreed. "And you're paying for Grandma's treatment." "Done." "And you're buying Giuseppe a new cart." "Done!" Giuseppe yelled from across the street, apparently having excellent hearing. "And," Nerissa stepped closer, poking Felix in the chest, "you're going to treat me like a partner, not a prop. I may be broke, but I'm not stupid." Felix caught her hand, holding it against his chest. "Partners," he said solemnly, "in fake marriage and real chaos." "Deal," Nerissa said, then immediately regretted it as she realized their faces were inches apart and he smelled like expensive cologne and fountain water. "Great," Felix said, seemingly unaware of the tension. Now we just need to get you cleaned up and teach you how to be a billionaire's wife in... He checked his waterlogged watch. 12 minutes. 12 minutes? Nerissa's voice cracked. Welcome to my world, Mrs. Blackwood. Hope you're ready for the ride of your life. As they stood there in the wreckage of hot dogs and broken dreams, covered in condiments and questionable life choices, neither of them noticed Giuseppe quietly taking photos with his phone, muttering, "This is better than reality TV." 12 minutes later, Nerissa stood in the executive bathroom of Blackwood Enterprises, staring at her reflection in horror. Felix's assistant Jeremy had somehow transformed her from homeless hot dog victim to billionaire's wife, using what appeared to be black magic and the emergency wardrobe that cost more than her car. "This dress cost more than my rent," Nerissa whispered, smoothing down the designer fabric. "Actually, it costs more than your rent for 3 years," Jeremy corrected cheerfully, applying final touches to her makeup. "Mr. Blackwood has excellent taste in women's fashion. Very suspicious, if you ask me." "I can hear you, Jeremy," Felix called from outside the bathroom door. "I wasn't trying to be quiet, sir." Nerissa giggled despite her nerves. "How long have you worked for him?" 5 years, 2 months, and approximately 47 mental breakdowns, Jeremy replied, stepping back to admire his work. "There, you look like you belong in this world." "But I don't," Nerissa said quietly. "Honey, nobody belongs in this world," Jeremy whispered conspiratorially. "We're all just pretending and hoping nobody notices." The bathroom door burst open and Felix strode in, now wearing a fresh suit and his usual arrogant confidence. He stopped dead when he saw Nerissa. "Wow," he breathed. "Is that good wow or bad wow?" Nerissa asked nervously. I'm definitely going to hell for having impure thoughts about my fake wife, wow," Jeremy muttered. "Jeremy!" "What? I'm just saying what we're all thinking." Felix cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "You look perfect. Ready to meet some very important, very traditional Japanese businessmen?" "About as ready as someone can be to lie to strangers about being married to a man I met an hour ago," Nerissa replied. "That's the spirit." Felix grinned. "Now, quick crash course in being my wife. We met at a charity gala 6 months ago." "What charity? Does it matter?" "If they ask details, it will." Felix paused. "Good point. Let's say animal rescue. I'm allergic to cats. Dogs, then. I'm afraid of dogs." "What aren't you allergic to or afraid of?" "Apparently arrogant billionaires, since I'm standing here." Jeremy snorted with laughter. "Oh, I like her." "Focus," Felix snapped. "Our first date was dinner at Le Bernardin. You ordered the salmon, I ordered the lobster. We bonded over our shared love of what?" Nerissa prompted. "Vintage wine. I don't drink. Modern art. I think Picasso was overrated. Books. Only romance novels." Felix stared at her in despair. "What do you like? Honesty, loyalty, people who don't yell at hot dog vendors, and men who care more about their grandmother's medical bills than their expensive suits," Nerissa said pointedly. "Right," Felix said weakly. "Maybe we should just wing it." "Wing it?" Jeremy shrieked. "Sir, these are the Yamamoto brothers. They built their empire on precision and tradition. You can't just wing marriage." "Relax, Jeremy. What's the worst that could happen?" The universe, once again, seemed to take this as a personal challenge. 10 minutes later, they sat across from Kenji and Hiroshi Yamamoto in the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan. The brothers were impeccably dressed, poker-faced, and had the kind of presence that made millionaires nervous. "Mr. Blackwood," Kenji said in perfect English, "we are honored to meet your wife at last." "The honor is ours," Felix replied smoothly, reaching for Nerissa's hand under the table. What he grabbed instead was the tablecloth. In slow motion, everything on the table, wine glasses, plates, centerpieces, and what appeared to be a very expensive sushi arrangement, slid gracefully toward the Yamamoto brothers' laps. "No!" Felix lunged forward, trying to catch the falling dishes. "I've got it!" Nerissa jumped up, attempting to grab the wine bottle. What followed was a catastrophic ballet of good intentions and terrible execution. Felix caught the wine bottle but knocked over a lamp. Nerissa saved the centerpiece but accidentally flung sushi across the room. The Yamamoto brothers sat frozen in horror as California rolls rained from the ceiling. "This is fine," Felix said desperately, a piece of seaweed hanging from his hair. "Everything is completely under control." "Felix Blackwood!" A shrill voice suddenly echoed across the restaurant. Everyone turned to see a blonde woman in a skin-tight dress storming toward their table like a designer missile. "Oh no," Felix whispered. "Veronica." "Who's Veronica?" Nerissa hissed. "My ex-fiancée." "Your what?" "Felix, darling." Veronica arrived at their table with the subtlety of a hurricane. "Imagine my surprise seeing you here with this person." She looked Nerissa up and down like she was inspecting a questionable piece of produce. "Veronica, meet my wife, Nerissa," Felix said weakly. "Wife?" Veronica's laugh could have shattered glass. "This little nobody? Please. You probably picked her up at a coffee shop this morning." Nerissa's eyes flashed dangerously. "Actually, it was a hot dog cart." Felix kicked her under the table. "How quaint," Veronica sneered. "Tell me, dear, what do you do for a living?" "I save failing businesses," Nerissa said sweetly, standing up to her full height. "What do you do, besides having your personality surgically removed?" The Yamamoto brothers' eyes widened with what might have been amusement. "I'm a philanthropist," Veronica snapped. "How wonderful! Which charity?" I support many causes." "Name one." The Society for, Veronica stammered. "The Society for Women Who Think Money Can Buy Class," Nerissa suggested helpfully. Kenji Yamamoto suddenly coughed, and Hiroshi's mouth twitched. "You little—" Veronica started. "Ladies," Felix interrupted desperately, "perhaps we could discuss this later." "Oh, we're discussing it now," Nerissa said, her voice getting dangerous. "Veronica, was it? Let me explain something to you. Felix and I may have met under unusual circumstances, but at least I care about him as a person, not as a bank account with legs." "Care about him?" Veronica laughed nastily. "Honey, you don't even know him. Ask him about his biggest fear. Ask him about his father. Ask him why he really needs this deal." Nerissa looked at Felix, who had gone very pale. "His biggest fear is letting down the people who count on him," Nerissa said quietly. "His father made him feel like he had to prove himself every day of his life. And he needs this deal because it's not just about money. It's about proving he's worthy of the name he carries." Felix stared at her in shock. How did she know? "Lucky guess," Veronica said weakly. "No," Nerissa said, her voice soft but firm. "It's what you see when you actually listen to someone instead of just hearing dollar signs." For a moment, the restaurant was completely silent. Then Kenji Yamamoto started to clap, slowly, deliberately, with growing approval. "Extraordinary," he said. "Mrs. Blackwood, you have just demonstrated the kind of loyalty and insight we value most in our business partnerships." You approve?" Felix asked, stunned. "We approve very much," Hiroshi added. "Your wife sees your true character, Mr. Blackwood. This speaks well of both of you." Veronica made a strangled noise and stormed off, but nobody paid attention. "So," Kenji continued, "shall we discuss the terms of our partnership?" 2 hours later, Felix and Nerissa stumbled out of the restaurant, both exhausted and slightly drunk on champagne and success. "We did it," Felix said in wonder. "We actually did it." "We did it?" Nerissa raised an eyebrow. "I seem to remember doing most of the work while you threw sushi around." "Hey, that sushi throwing was strategic. It distracted them from my obvious terror." "Your terror was not obvious. Your panic sweating, however." Felix laughed, pulling her close in what was supposed to be a grateful hug. But as their faces came close together, the laughter died. "Nerissa," he said quietly, "how did you know?" About my father. About everything. It's written all over your face, she whispered back. You're not as mysterious as you think, Felix Blackwood. And you're not as simple as I thought, Nerissa Hope. They stood there on the sidewalk, still holding each other, both realizing that somewhere between the hot dog cart and the sushi catastrophe, something real had started growing between them. This is dangerous, Nerissa said softly. Very dangerous, Felix agreed. It's just pretend. Just pretend. But neither of them let go. 3 days later, Nerissa found herself staring at a private jet on the tarmac, wondering if her life had become a fever dream. "This is your idea of a weekend getaway?" she asked Felix, who was loading designer luggage like he was packing for a royal expedition. "The Yamamoto brothers want to see us in our natural habitat," Felix explained, making air quotes. "Apparently they think a weekend at my family's estate will show them our authentic marriage dynamic." "Your family estate? Felix, I can barely handle fancy restaurants without destroying them. Now you want me to meet your parents?" "Just my father," Felix said, his face darkening. "And trust me, after dealing with him, the Yamamoto brothers will seem like teddy bears." "How bad can he be?" Felix's laugh had zero humor in it. "Let's just say he makes Gordon Ramsay look like a kindergarten teacher." 2 hours later, their jet touched down on a private airstrip in the Hamptons. A black Bentley waited on the tarmac, driven by a man who looked like he could bench press a small car. "That's Marcus," Felix explained as they approached. "He's been the family driver since I was 5. Also serves as bodyguard, therapist, and occasionally my conscience." Marcus nodded politely to Nerissa. "Welcome, Mrs. Blackwood. I've heard interesting things about you." "Interesting good or interesting bad?" Nerissa asked nervously. "Interesting like, finally someone who might keep this boy in line," Marcus replied with a slight smile. The drive to the estate took 20 minutes through increasingly ridiculous displays of wealth, mansions that looked like small countries, gardens that probably required their own zip codes, and finally, the Blackwood family compound. "Holy shit," Nerissa whispered, as they pulled through iron gates that belonged in a medieval castle. "Language, darling," Felix said automatically, then caught himself. "Sorry. That's something my father always said to you," Nerissa finished gently. "How old were you when you stopped being allowed to be a kid?" Felix stared at her, startled by her insight. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "See things that other people miss." Before Nerissa could answer, the car stopped in front of a mansion that looked like it had been stolen from a European fairy tale. The front door opened, and out stepped a man who was clearly Felix's father, if Felix had been put through a corporate blender and stripped of all warmth. Harrison Blackwood III was tall, silver-haired, and had the kind of presence that made grown men apologize for existing. His smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Felix," he said, embracing his son in the kind of hug that looked affectionate but felt like a business transaction. "And this must be the famous Nerissa." "Mr. Blackwood." Nerissa extended her hand. "Thank you for having me. Please, call me Harrison, though I must admit, I'm curious about this whirlwind romance. Felix has never been one for spontaneous decisions." The way he said it made it clear that spontaneous decisions were somewhere below stepping in dog poop on his list of acceptable behaviors. "Sometimes the best things in life are unplanned," Nerissa replied diplomatically. "Indeed." Harrison's smile never wavered, but his eyes turned glacial. "Though in business we prefer calculated risks to impulsive gambles." Felix tensed beside her. "Father, no need to defend your choice, son. I'm sure Nerissa understands that love and business often require different skill sets." And there it was, the casual verbal knife delivered with surgical precision. Nerissa felt her temper start to simmer. "You're absolutely right," she said sweetly. "Love requires emotional intelligence, empathy, and the ability to value people over profit. Very different skills indeed." Harrison's eyebrows rose slightly. Felix looked like he was watching a tennis match between a professional player and a landmine. "How refreshing," Harrison said finally. "Felix, why don't you show Nerissa to your room? Dinner is at 7. The Yamamoto brothers will be joining us." As they walked away, Nerissa whispered, "Is he always that charming?" "That was him being nice," Felix muttered. "You just declared war on Harrison Blackwood III. I'm not sure whether to be terrified or turned on." "Can you be both?" "Apparently." Felix's childhood room was a museum of expensive achievements. Trophies, awards, certificates, all perfectly arranged like evidence of a life lived for approval. The only personal touch was a faded photo of a young Felix, with a woman who had his eyes and Nerissa's smile. "Your mother?" Nerissa asked gently. Felix nodded. "She died when I was 12. Car accident." "I'm sorry." "She would have liked you," Felix said quietly. "She always said the best people were the ones who fought for others instead of themselves." "Is that what you think I'm doing?" "Isn't it? Fighting for your grandmother, fighting for your diner, fighting for me against my father." "I'm not fighting for you, Felix," Nerissa said softly. "I'm fighting with you. There's a difference." Before Felix could respond, a commotion erupted from downstairs, shouting, crashing sounds, and what sounded suspiciously like someone yelling in Japanese. They rushed downstairs to find chaos in the foyer. The Yamamoto brothers stood in the doorway, dripping wet and covered in what appeared to be pond scum. Harrison looked horrified. The household staff was running around with towels. "What happened?" Felix demanded. "Your sprinkler system," Hiroshi said calmly, wringing out his jacket. "It activated when we approached the front door." "And your security geese," Kenji added. "We were not prepared for security geese." "Security geese?" Nerissa looked at Felix in disbelief. "Father's idea," Felix said weakly. "He thought they were more elegant than guard dogs." "Elegant?" Nerissa stared at Harrison. "You said attack geese on your dinner guests?" "They're not attack geese," Harrison protested. "They're heritage Sebastopol geese, bred for traumatizing Japanese businessmen," Nerissa interrupted. "The geese are trained to respond to unexpected visitors," Harrison said stiffly. "Unexpected? You invited them. The security system must have malfunctioned. Or maybe your house is so unwelcoming that even the sprinklers are trying to drive people away." The entire room went silent. Harrison's face turned an alarming shade of purple. Felix looked like he was planning his own funeral. Then Kenji Yamamoto started laughing. It started as a chuckle, then grew into full-blown laughter. Soon, Hiroshi joined in, and within moments, both brothers were laughing so hard they could barely stand. "In 40 years of business," Kenji gasped, "we have never been attacked by geese at a dinner party." "It is refreshing," Hiroshi agreed, still laughing. "This is not amusing," Harrison said coldly. "On the contrary," Kenji wiped his eyes, "this is the most genuine welcome we've received in years. Mrs. Blackwood, your honesty is illuminating." What?" Nerissa blinked. "You defend your guests against ridiculous security measures," Hiroshi explained. "You speak truth to power. These are qualities we admire greatly." Harrison looked like he'd swallowed a live eel. "Perhaps," Kenji continued, "we should change into dry clothes and continue this fascinating evening." An hour later, dinner was served. The Yamamoto brothers, now in borrowed clothes that were slightly too large, seemed to be enjoying themselves immensely. Harrison sat at the head of the table like a king whose kingdom was being invaded by friendly barbarians. "So, Mrs. Blackwood," Kenji said over the soup course, "how do you handle your husband's intense personality?" "I don't handle it," Nerissa replied, glancing at Felix. "I appreciate it. Felix cares deeply about everything he does. Some people mistake passion for intensity." "And his father's guidance?" Hiroshi asked delicately. The table went very quiet. Harrison's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "I think," Nerissa said carefully, "that when you love someone, you want them to succeed. Sometimes that love comes out as pressure instead of support. It doesn't make it wrong, just misguided. She looked directly at Harrison. Felix doesn't need to prove he's worthy of the Blackwood name. He already honors it every day by trying to be better than he was yesterday. Harrison set down his fork. For a moment, his corporate mask slipped, and Nerissa saw something vulnerable underneath. "My son has always been impulsive," Harrison said quietly. "I wanted to protect him from making expensive mistakes." "The most expensive mistake," Nerissa said gently, "would be never trying at all." Father and son looked at each other across the table, really looked, for what felt like the first time in years. "Well," Kenji said softly, "we have seen enough. Mr. Blackwood, Mrs. Blackwood, we would be honored to partner with your company." "Just like that?" Felix asked, stunned. "Just like that," Hiroshi confirmed. "A man who chooses a wife who will defend strangers and speak truth to family is a man we can trust in business." Later that night, Felix and Nerissa walked through the estate gardens under a canopy of stars. The security geese watched them suspiciously from their pond. "Thank you," Felix said quietly. "For what?" "For defending the Yamamoto brothers, for standing up to my father, for seeing me." "Felix." Nerissa stopped walking and turned to face him. "What happens when this month is over?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "I don't know," he finally said. "A week ago, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. Now I'm starting to think what I want might be standing right in front of me." Nerissa's heart did that fluttery thing again. "Felix, I know it's crazy. I know this whole thing is fake and complicated and probably the worst idea either of us has ever had, but somewhere between the hot dog cart and the attack geese, I started falling for my fake wife." Nerissa looked up at him, her heart pounding. "That is crazy. Completely insane. Absolutely ridiculous. The worst possible timing. And probably the most honest thing either of us has said all week." They moved closer together, the space between them charged with possibility. "Nerissa," Felix whispered. "Felix," she whispered back. And then, because the universe had a sense of timing, the sprinkler system activated again, drenching them both in ice-cold water. They broke apart, sputtering and laughing. "Your house really doesn't like romance, does it?" Nerissa gasped. "Apparently not," Felix laughed, pulling her close again despite the water. "But I'm willing to fight a few sprinklers for you." "Just sprinklers? What about attack geese?" "Especially attack geese." And as they stood there, soaking wet and completely ridiculous, both of them realized that somewhere along the way, their fake marriage had started to feel terrifyingly real. 1 week later, Nerissa stood in Felix's penthouse kitchen making breakfast, humming softly while she flipped pancakes. It was terrifyingly domestic, and she was terrifyingly happy about it. "You know," Felix said, walking in wearing nothing but pajama pants and bedhead. "I could get used to this." "To what? Pancakes?" Nerissa tried not to stare at his chest. She failed. "To waking up to the sound of someone who's actually happy to see me." "I'm always happy to see you," Nerissa said, then immediately regretted how genuine that sounded. Felix moved closer, backing her against the counter. "Are you?" "Felix," she warned, but her voice was breathless. "Because I'm always happy to see you too," he whispered, his hands finding her waist. They were inches apart, the air between them electric, when Felix's phone exploded with the most obnoxious ringtone imaginable. "Money, Money, Money" by ABBA. "Jeremy," Felix groaned without moving away. "I'm going to fire him." "Answer it," Nerissa laughed, pushing him away gently. "It might be important." Felix grabbed the phone. "This better be life or death, Jeremy." "Sir, have you seen the news?" Jeremy's voice was panicked even through the speaker. "No, why would I?" Felix stopped. Nerissa was holding up her phone, her face pale. On the screen was a gossip website with the headline, "Billionaire's Fake Wife Exposed, the Hot Dog Cart Scandal That Rocked Manhattan." Below it was a series of photos, Felix and Nerissa's collision, their handshake agreement, and most damning of all, Giuseppe's footage of their entire conversation with clear audio. "Oh no," Nerissa whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." "How bad is it?" Felix asked Jeremy, though he was already reading the article over Nerissa's shoulder. "Sir, it's trending on every social media platform, and fake wife is the #1 hashtag in the country. The Yamamoto brothers are asking for an emergency meeting, and your father—" Jeremy paused. "Your father is on his way up." "What?" Felix's blood ran cold. "How is he—" The penthouse door burst open with a bang that could be heard 3 states away. Harrison Blackwood III strode in like an avenging angel in Armani, his face a mask of cold fury. "Felix Nathaniel Blackwood," he roared. "Oh, we're using middle names," Nerissa muttered. "This is bad. You," Harrison pointed at Nerissa like she was a war criminal, "have single-handedly destroyed 20 years of careful business relationships." "Father, it's not her fault," Felix started. "Not her fault?" Harrison's voice could have shattered windows. "She agreed to this insane charade. She participated in fraud." "It wasn't fraud," Nerissa snapped back, her own temper flaring. "It was a business arrangement. A business arrangement that involved lying to some of the most powerful men in international commerce." "We didn't lie about anything that mattered." "Nothing that mattered?" Harrison looked apoplectic. "You made them believe you were married. We made them believe Felix was capable of commitment and caring about someone other than himself," Nerissa shot back. "And guess what? It worked. They signed the deal. A deal they're now threatening to cancel." The room went silent. Felix felt his world crashing down around him. "They want to cancel?" he asked quietly. Harrison's expression softened slightly when he saw his son's face. "The Yamamoto brothers are disappointed. They feel deceived. They're flying back to Tokyo this afternoon, unless we can convince them that there was some truth to your relationship." "But there was truth," Nerissa said desperately. "I mean, we might have started fake, but—" "But what?" Harrison demanded. "But somewhere along the way, it became real," Felix said quietly. Harrison stared at his son. "Real?" "I'm in love with her, father," Felix said, looking directly at Nerissa. "Somewhere between the hot dog cart and last night, I fell completely, hopelessly in love with my fake wife." Nerissa's heart stopped. "Felix, I know it's crazy," he continued. "I know it's fast. I know it's everything you taught me not to do, but—" "But I love you too," Nerissa interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "You do?" Felix's voice cracked. "I do. I love your ridiculous confidence, your terrible jokes, the way you care so much about everything that it scares you. I love that you're brave enough to be vulnerable and stubborn enough to fight for what matters." "This is very touching," Harrison said dryly, "but love doesn't fix business disasters." "Actually," a calm voice said from the doorway, "it might." Everyone turned to see Kenji and Hiroshi Yamamoto standing in the entrance, having apparently walked in during the emotional confessions. "How long have you been there?" Felix asked weakly. "Long enough," Hiroshi said with a slight smile. "Your doorman let us up. We wanted to hear your explanation before making our final decision." "And?" Nerissa asked, terrified. "And," Kenji said, "we have heard something very interesting." "You have?" "Yes. We have heard 2 people admit they entered into a business arrangement that became a real relationship. We have heard a woman defend a man not for his money, but for his character. We have heard a man choose love over safety." Hiroshi nodded. "In our culture, we have a saying, 'The heart that can change is the heart that can lead.'" "What does that mean?" Felix asked. "It means," Kenji said, "that a man who can transform a business arrangement into true love is a man who can transform challenges into opportunities. You're not canceling the deal. Harrison asked, stunned. On the contrary, Hiroshi replied. We are more confident than ever that this partnership will succeed. But we lied to you, Narissa protested. You started with a lie, Kenji corrected, but you ended with truth. The best business relationships are built on the ability to adapt and grow. You have both demonstrated this beautifully. Felix and Narissa looked at each other in amazement. However, Hiroshi added with a twinkle in his eye, we do have one condition. Anything, Felix said quickly. We want to attend your real wedding. Our what? Narissa squeaked. Your real wedding, Kenji repeated. If you are truly in love, you will make it official, yes? Narissa looked panicked. We haven't really discussed. Narissa hope, Felix said suddenly, dropping to one knee right there in his kitchen, still in his pajama pants with his hair sticking up. Will you marry me? For real this time? Felix, you don't have to. I want to. I want to wake up to you humming in my kitchen for the rest of my life. I want to fight attack geese with you. I want to build something real with you. But I'm nobody special, Narissa whispered. I'm just a waitress from Queens. You're the woman who made me want to be better, Felix said firmly. You're the woman who sees the best in everyone, who fights for the people she loves, who makes me laugh even when I'm covered in hot dog condiments. You're everything I never knew I needed. This is highly irregular, Harrison muttered, but there was no real complaint in his voice. Shut up, Harrison, Narissa said without taking her eyes off Felix. Your son is proposing. So? Felix asked, still on one knee. What do you say? Narissa looked around the room, at Felix's hopeful face, at the Yamamoto brothers' encouraging smiles, at Harrison's grudging approval, at the chaos that had become her life. I say, she said slowly, that this is the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. Is that a yes? That's a hell yes, Narissa laughed, pulling him up to kiss him. The room erupted in applause. Well, Jeremy applauded from somewhere via speakerphone. The Yamamoto brothers clapped politely, and Harrison actually smiled. One more thing, Hiroshi said, as the celebration died down. What now? Felix asked, slightly dizzy from happiness. We still want Giuseppe to cater the wedding. Anyone who can make a hot dog cart collision romantic clearly has hidden talents. Giuseppe? Narissa laughed. You want Giuseppe to cater our wedding? It seems appropriate, Kenji said with a grin. After all, he's the one who brought you together. Actually, Felix said, pulling Narissa close, I think that was fate. Or gravity, Narissa corrected. Or very poorly positioned hot dog carts. Or helicopter-induced tree branch incidents. Whatever it was, Felix said, kissing her forehead. I'm grateful. Even if our love story starts with, so I was covered in mustard when I met your mother. Especially then, Felix grinned. Our kids are going to have the best how we met story ever. Kids? Narissa raised an eyebrow. Too soon? Way too soon, she laughed. But ask me again after we figure out how to plan a real wedding. Deal, Felix said, spinning her around his kitchen while Harrison rolled his eyes and the Yamamoto brothers took notes on American romance customs. And for the first time in his life, Felix Blackwood didn't care about making a deal. He cared about making a life. With the most amazing fake wife turned real fiancé he'd ever accidentally collision met. 2 weeks later, the morning of their wedding, Narissa woke up to what could only be described as the apocalypse. Felix! She screamed from the bathroom of their hotel suite. Why is there a raccoon in the shower? A what? Felix called back, struggling with his bow tie in the bedroom. A raccoon, a furry masked bandit raccoon, in our shower, on our wedding day. That's not normal, Felix said, appearing in the doorway just as the raccoon poked its head out from behind the shower curtain like a furry shower curtain inspector. You think? Narissa backed away slowly. What kind of 5-star hotel has raccoon room service? The raccoon chittered at them indignantly, as if offended by their lack of hospitality. Maybe it's a good luck sign? Felix suggested weakly. In what universe is a bathroom raccoon good luck? The universe where everything that can go wrong on our wedding day apparently will? As if summoned by his words, Jeremy burst through the door, his usually perfect hair looking like he'd been electrocuted. Sir, ma'am, we have situations, multiple situations. How multiple? Nerissa asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Giuseppe's hot dog cart broke down on the FDR drive. The flowers were eaten by a rogue pack of Central Park squirrels. The wedding cake collapsed because apparently the hotel's air conditioning is having an identity crisis and decided to become a sauna. And, Jeremy paused dramatically, Veronica crashed the bachelor party last night and somehow convinced half the groomsmen that you're only marrying Felix for his money. She what? Nerissa's voice reached octaves previously unknown to science. Also, Jeremy continued, apparently not done with the chaos update, your grandmother Rose is in a wheelchair fight with Harrison over the seating arrangements. The priest is stuck in an elevator, and there's a protest outside. A protest? Felix blinked. About what? Something about rich people appropriating working-class love stories. They have signs, very creative signs. Oh, and one more tiny thing, Jeremy added. The wedding rings are missing. Missing? Felix and Nerissa screamed in unison. The ring bearer, your nephew Tyler, apparently decided to keep them safe by burying them somewhere in Central Park. He's being very secretive about the location. Nerissa sat down heavily on the bed. This is a sign. The universe is telling us this is a mistake. Hey, Felix sat beside her, taking her hand. The universe already told us we belong together. Remember? Hot dog cart collision, attack geese, bathroom raccoons. This is just our love story's special brand of chaos. You think a raccoon in the bathroom is romantic? I think everything about us is beautifully insane, Felix said, kissing her forehead. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? The raccoon chose that moment to knock over every bottle in the shower, creating a cascade of shampoo and what sounded like a small explosion. You had to ask, Nerissa muttered. 3 hours later, the wedding was happening. Kind of. Giuseppe had set up his backup hot dog cart in Central Park and was serving gourmet wedding dogs to guests sitting on picnic blankets instead of fancy chairs. The protesters had been won over by free hot dogs and were now holding signs reading "Love Wins" and "Team Hot Dog Romance." The missing flowers had been replaced by wildflowers that Jeremy had apparently harvested from various Central Park locations with questionable legality. The collapsed cake had been substituted with a tower of Giuseppe's famous cannoli. This is either the most romantic thing ever or the biggest disaster in wedding history, Nerissa said, peeking out from behind a tree where she was hiding in her slightly wrinkled wedding dress. Why not both? Said Grandma Rose, rolling up in her wheelchair wearing a corsage made of hot dog buns. Honey, your grandfather proposed to me during a blackout while we were stuck in a subway tunnel. Sometimes the best love stories happen when everything goes wrong. Did you find the rings? Nerissa asked Tyler, who was approaching with dirt under his fingernails and a guilty expression. Maybe, Tyler said evasively. Maybe? I buried them really good, like treasure hunt good. Tyler. Nerissa's voice had a dangerous edge. But I made a map. Tyler produced a crayon drawing that looked like it had been created by a drunk pirate. X marks the spot. Is that a drawing of a duck or a tree? Rose squinted at the map. It's a duck tree, Tyler explained helpfully. You know, the tree that looks like a duck near the pond, where the guy feeds the actual ducks. There are 40 trees near that pond, Nerissa said faintly. This is fine, Felix appeared, wearing a slightly askew bow tie and leaves in his hair. We'll find them. How hard can it be to find 2 small rings buried somewhere in a 840-acre park? Sir? Jeremy approached cautiously. The priest is here. Great. Where was he stuck? He wasn't stuck. He was at the wrong Central Park. Apparently there's a Central Park in New Jersey, too. Who knew? Of course there is, Nerissa muttered. But I found a replacement, Jeremy announced proudly. A replacement priest? Sort of. Remember the street performer who does Shakespeare in the Park? He's licensed to perform weddings in New York. He's very theatrical. As if on cue, a man in full Shakespearean costume appeared, complete with ruffles and a feathered hat. Greetings. I am Sir Reginald Montague, and I shall officiate this union with all the passion and drama it deserves, he announced in a voice that could be heard in Connecticut. Is he for real? Nerissa whispered. As real as anything else about our relationship, Felix whispered back. Fair point. Now, Sir Reginald continued, before we begin this most sacred ceremony, do we have the rings? About that, Tyler started. We're working on it, Felix interrupted. Maybe we could start without them. Without rings? Preposterous. What kind of matrimonial ceremony lacks the sacred symbols of eternal commitment? The kind where the ring-bearer has buried them somewhere in Central Park like a demented squirrel, Nerissa muttered. Ah, a treasure hunt! Sir Reginald's eyes lit up. How wonderfully romantic. A quest for the symbols of love. It's not romantic, it's infuriating, Harrison said, approaching the group with Giuseppe's mustard on his expensive suit. This entire wedding is a catastrophe. Harrison, Rose wheeled up to him, shut up and help us find the rings, or I'll run over your feet. You can't threaten me, madam. I'm not threatening you. I'm promising you. These wheels are surprisingly heavy. Nerissa looked around at the chaos. Guests eating hot dogs off paper plates, protesters turned wedding supporters waving handmade signs, a Shakespearean wedding officiant, her grandmother threatening to assault her future father-in-law with a wheelchair, and a 7-year-old ring-bearer who had apparently taken the concept of ring security to military levels. Felix, she said quietly. Yeah, this is insane. Completely. Our wedding looks like a circus. The best kind of circus. I'm pretty sure I have mustard on my dress. You've never looked more beautiful. Nerissa turned to look at him. Really look at him. His bow tie was crooked. His hair was messy. There was a small stain on his jacket that might have been ketchup, and he was grinning at her like she was the most amazing thing he'd ever seen. You know what? She said suddenly. What? I don't care about the rings. You don't? I don't care about the rings, or the flowers, or the cake, or the raccoon in our bathroom, or the fact that our wedding looks like a very expensive tailgate party. No. No. Because I'm marrying you, and everything else is just details. Felix's smile could have powered the entire city. Really? Really? Besides, Nerissa grinned, how many people can say their love story includes attack geese and a ring-burying ring-bearer? Only us. Only us, she agreed. I found them! Tyler suddenly screamed from across the clearing. I found the rings! He came running toward them, holding 2 slightly dirty but recognizable rings. They were exactly where I buried them, he announced proudly. Where was that? Felix asked. Under the duck tree. Tyler, Nerissa said patiently. Which tree was the duck tree? The one that looks like a duck. Everyone turned to look at the tree Tyler was pointing to. It was a perfectly normal oak tree. That doesn't look like a duck, Rose said. It does if you squint and turn your head sideways, Tyler explained. See? Duck. I see it, Felix said solemnly. You do not, Nerissa laughed. I see whatever you see, Felix said, taking her hand. That's the cheesiest thing you've ever said. And I meant every word. Now, Sir Reginald announced, apparently having waited long enough for romance. Let us begin this ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in this most unconventional of settings to witness the union of 2 souls who have found love in the most unexpected of places. A hot dog cart, Giuseppe called out from his food station. Indeed, a hot dog cart. Let this be a lesson to us all. Love can be found anywhere, even in the most mustard-covered of circumstances. The crowd laughed and cheered. Nerissa felt tears of happiness streaming down her face. Felix Blackwood, Sir Reginald continued dramatically. Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, through hot dog disasters and raccoon invasions, for as long as you both shall live? I do, Felix said, his voice strong and clear. I absolutely do. And Nerissa Hope, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, through business deals and family drama, through helicopter landings and attack geese, for as long as you both shall live? I do, Nerissa said, laughing through her tears. I really, really do. Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York and the Royal Shakespeare Company, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Felix didn't need to be told twice. He pulled Nerissa close and kissed her with all the passion and joy and chaos that had brought them together. The crowd erupted in cheers. Giuseppe started handing out celebratory hot dogs. The protesters threw confetti made from hot dog wrappers. Even Harrison was smiling. And somewhere in the distance, a raccoon watched approvingly from a tree. So, Felix said when they finally broke apart, how does it feel to be Mrs. Blackwood? Like I just married my best friend, Nerissa said softly. Your hot dog-covered, helicopter-flying, geese-fighting best friend? The very best kind. 1 year later, Nerissa stood in the newly renovated Sunrise Diner, watching Felix attempt to flip pancakes while wearing a Kiss the Cook apron that Grandma Rose had bought him for their first anniversary. He was failing spectacularly. Felix, she said patiently, pancakes are supposed to land back in the pan, not on the ceiling. I'm working on my technique, he replied, scraping batter off the light fixture. Giuseppe makes it look so easy. Giuseppe has 40 years of experience. You have 40 minutes. Details, Felix grinned, then yelped as another pancake went rogue and landed on his head. The diner's morning rush was in full swing. Since their wedding had gone viral, Central Park Hot Dog Wedding had become a trending hashtag for months. The Sunrise Diner had become a tourist destination. People came from all over the world to eat at the place where the fake wife couple had their first real conversation. Order up, Giuseppe called from his new permanent spot at the grill. After the wedding, Felix had hired him as head chef, and the combination of diner classics and gourmet hot dogs had made them the most popular breakfast spot in Queens. Table 6 wants to know if you two are really married, or if it's still fake, called Maria, their newest waitress. Tell them we're still figuring it out ourselves, Nerissa laughed, then grabbed Felix's hand as he walked by. But we're pretty sure it's real. Pretty sure? Felix raised an eyebrow. Okay, completely sure. Especially after you agreed to work here every Saturday morning despite having zero culinary skills. Hey, I'm improving. I only set off the smoke alarm twice this week. It's Tuesday, Felix. Like I said, improvement. The diner door chimed, and in walked the Yamamoto brothers, now regular customers who stopped by whenever they were in New York. Kenji, Hiroshi, Nerissa called out, grabbing 2 menus. Your usual table? Actually, Kenji said with a mysterious smile, we have news. Good news or our business partnership is doomed news? Felix asked, finally abandoning his pancake disaster. The best news, Hiroshi replied. We want to offer you a proposal. Another one? Nerissa laughed. Because Felix already used up his proposal quota for this lifetime. We want to franchise the diner, Kenji explained. Sunrise diners across Japan. The concept of authentic American breakfast culture combined with your unique love story marketing. You want to franchise us? Felix blinked. You want to put our chaos in other countries? Nerissa added. Your chaos, as you call it, represents something very appealing. Authentic human connection in an increasingly artificial world, Hiroshi said seriously. People want real stories, real food, real relationships. Plus, Kenji grinned, Giuseppe's hot dogs are apparently considered a delicacy in Tokyo now. Giuseppe beamed from behind the grill. I always knew I was an artist. What do you think? Felix asked Nerissa quietly. I think, she said slowly, that a year ago I was worried about paying my grandmother's medical bills. And now Japanese businessmen want to turn our love story into an international breakfast empire. And I think it's completely insane. The best kind of insane? The best kind, she agreed, then turned to the Yamamoto brothers. We accept, but Giuseppe comes with us to Tokyo to train the chefs. Tokyo? Giuseppe practically levitated with excitement. I'm going to Tokyo! We'll discuss details later, Kenji said. For now, we just want our usual, the fake marriage special. 2 Giuseppe's gourmet hot dogs with a side of chaos coming up, Maria called out. As the Yamamoto brothers settled into their booth, the diner door chimed again. This time Harrison entered, followed by Grandma Rose in her wheelchair, both arguing about something. I'm telling you, Harrison, if you put pineapple on pizza, you're dead to me, Rose was saying. It's a perfectly acceptable topping, Rose. It adds sweetness. It adds betrayal. Are they, Felix started, fighting about pizza again? Yeah, Nerissa sighed. They've been doing this for months. I think it's their way of flirting. That's terrifying. That's love at 70 plus. Harrison and Rose had become unlikely friends after the wedding, bonding over their shared mission to keep Felix and Nerissa grounded, which apparently involved a lot of arguing about food choices and competitive wheelchair racing through Central Park. Felix, Harrison called out, your wife is trying to put vegetables in the breakfast hash. They're not vegetables, they're herbs, Nerissa protested. There's a difference. Herbs are vegetables, Rose shouted from her wheelchair. Don't let her gaslight you about plant taxonomy. I love our family, Felix said, watching the chaos with fond amusement. Our very weird, very loud, very perfect family, Nerissa agreed. Jeremy burst through the door, looking frazzled as usual. Sir, ma'am, emergency. What now? They said in unison. Tyler buried something again. What did he bury this time? Nerissa asked, though she was afraid of the answer. The key to your apartment. He said he was keeping it safe from burglars. Of course he did, Felix laughed. Did he make a map? He made a map, Jeremy confirmed, holding up another crayon masterpiece. But this time he drew it in invisible ink. Invisible ink? Water. He drew it in water. Nerissa stared at Jeremy. So we have a blank piece of paper. A very wet blank piece of paper. Where's Tyler now? Hiding under the counter, Giuseppe called out. He's been there for an hour. Sure enough, Tyler peeked out from behind the counter, looking guilty. Tyler, Nerissa said gently, where did you bury the key? I can't tell you. It's secret. Tyler, but I can show you, if you give me ice cream. It's 9 a.m., Felix pointed out. Ice cream doesn't have a schedule, Uncle Felix. He's not wrong, Harrison said. I've been eating ice cream for breakfast since I was 70. It's one of the perks of age. You're 68, Rose corrected. I'm practicing for 70. Deal, Nerissa told Tyler. Ice cream after we find the key. 20 minutes later, they were all standing in Central Park again, watching Tyler dig around the base of what he insisted was the squirrel tree. That's not a squirrel tree, Harrison observed. That's clearly an oak. All trees are squirrel trees if you're a squirrel, Tyler replied with 7-year-old logic. He has a point, Felix said. Found it, Tyler announced, holding up a slightly dirty apartment key. Thank God, Nerissa sighed. I was not looking forward to calling a locksmith again. Again? Kenji asked. He and Hiroshi had followed them to the park, apparently finding their chaos entertaining. Tyler has buried our keys 4 times this year, Felix explained. We've started hiding spare keys from Tyler. Smart. Hiroshi nodded approvingly. Not smart enough, Tyler grinned. I found those too. Tyler, Nerissa said slowly, where are our spare keys? Safe place. Tyler. The duck tree! Everyone looked at the oak tree that Tyler had designated as the duck tree at their wedding. Of course they are, Felix laughed. Should we dig them up now or save it for next week's adventure? Next week, Nerissa decided. I can only handle so much Tyler-induced chaos per day. As they walked back toward the diner, Felix caught Nerissa's hand. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. "About what? About saying yes to a crazy billionaire covered in mustard?" Nerissa looked around at their ridiculous, wonderful, chaotic life. Tyler running ahead with a pocket full of buried treasures. Harrison and Rose arguing about whether hot dogs counted as sandwiches. Giuseppe planning his Tokyo adventure. Jeremy frantically taking notes about key hiding strategies. And the Yamamoto brothers discussing the philosophical implications of breakfast food. "Only one," she said seriously. Felix's face fell. "What?" "I regret not getting more mustard on you that first day. You looked good in mustard." Felix's laugh was so loud it scared a flock of pigeons into flight. "I love you, Nerissa Blackwood," he said, spinning her around in the middle of the park. "I love you too, Felix Blackwood, even when you destroy my kitchen with your pancake experiments." "Hey, those pancakes are getting better." "Sure they are." "They are. Giuseppe said the last batch only violated 3 health codes instead of 5. My standards are clearly getting lower. Or your love is getting stronger." "Definitely the love thing," Nerissa agreed, kissing him soundly while Tyler made gagging noises in the background. And as they stood there in Central Park, surrounded by their chaotic, loving, completely insane family, both of them knew that their fake marriage had become the most real thing in their lives. Even if Tyler kept burying their keys. Especially because Tyler kept burying their keys. Because sometimes the best love stories are the ones that start with collision and end with chaos, held together by laughter, mustard, and the kind of love that finds treasure in every buried key. The end.